There is a football club in Europe that plays in official competitions, travels across borders and competes against some of the biggest teams in the world. A club that has faced Real Madrid, a club that has played in the Champions League. And yet, if you're trying to find the country it comes from, you won't find it. Not on a map, not officially. Because this club does not come from a recognized nation. It comes from a place that exists in reality, but not in the eyes of the world. A narrow strip of land frozen in time, where Soviet symbols still stand, where borders are guarded, but not acknowledged. This is Transnistria, a breakaway region unrecognized by almost every country on earth. And in the middle of it stands a football club, Sheriff Tiraspol. At first glance, it feels like a contradiction. Football is global, structured and regulated. It belongs to systems that rely on recognition, on nations, on federations. So how can a club from a country that officially doesn't exist compete at the highest level of European football? How does it get there? And more importantly, what does it represent? Welcome to Hidden Club Stories, where every club carries a story. This is a story of Sheriff Tiraspol. This video is sponsored by Hidden Shirt Club. They sell premium football shirt mystery boxes with real stories. If you want to discover your own story, you can use code TRIFINIO10 at checkout. To understand Sheriff Tiraspol, you have to step away from football for a moment, because this story does not begin on a pitch. It begins in a place that feels disconnected from the modern world. Transnistria is a region that officially belongs to Moldova, but has operated as its own state since the early 1990s. It has its own government, its own currency, its own army, and yet it is not recognized as a country by the international community. For decades, it has existed in a strange kind of silence, not fully independent, not fully part of anything else. In a place where Soviet-era statues still stand in public squares, where symbols from a different time remain part of daily life. It is not a place that often appears in headlines, not a place that is widely understood. And certainly not a place you would expect to produce a Champions League football club. Because football, at least in most cases, follows visibility. It grows in places that are seen, supported and connected. Transnistria is none of those things. It exists on the margins, and yet, within those margins, something unexpected was built. Not by accident, not by tradition, but by design. Sheriff is not just the name of the football club. It is the name of the company that dominates life in Transnistria. A company that controls supermarkets, gas stations, media, and infrastructure. A presence so large that it is impossible to separate it from its region itself. And at some point, that company decided to build a football club. Not as a hobby, not as a cultural project, but as an extension of its influence. Sheriff Tiraspol was created with resources that most clubs in Moldova could never dream of. Modern facilities, a professional structure, a level of organization that stood in complete contrast to its surroundings. While the region remained isolated, the club looked outward. It recruited players internationally. It built a system designed not just to compete locally, but to dominate. And that is exactly what happened. In Moldova, Sheriff did not slowly grow into success, it took control. 1 year after their founding, Sheriff Tiraspol gained promotion to the first division, and then they won the league for 10 consecutive seasons in a row. League titles became routine, domestic dominance became expected, but success within Moldova was never the final goal. Because a club built with that level of ambition cannot remain contained within its own borders. Sooner or later, it looks toward Europe. For years, Sheriff Tiraspol existed in a kind of contradiction, dominant at home, but largely unknown beyond it. They entered European competitions like many smaller clubs do, quietly, without expectation, often dismissed before they even had a chance to prove anything, because football trends to follow familiar narratives. Big clubs are expected to win, smaller ones are expected to participate. Sheriff did not fit either category. It came from a place few understood, backed by a system few could fully explain. And yet, they continued to push. Qualifying rounds, early exits, but small steps forward. Until one season, everything changed. For the first time in its own history, Sheriff Tiraspol reached the Champions League group stage. It was already a remarkable achievement, a club from an unrecognized region standing among the elite of European football. But what came next would transform that moment into something unforgettable. September 2021. The Santiago Bernabeu, Real Madrid. A stadium built for dominance, for history, for moments that reinforce the natural order of football. Sheriff Tiraspol arrived there as outsiders, not just underdogs, but almost as an anomaly. A team many viewers had never seen before, from a place many had never heard of. The expectation was clear. This was not supposed to be competitive. It was supposed to be routine. But football does not always follow expectation. From the beginning of the match, Sheriff did not look overwhelmed. They looked organized, disciplined, calm in a way that did not match the scale of this occasion. And slowly the game began to shift. They took the lead, but Real Madrid immediately responded. The match balanced on the edge of inevitability once again. And then, in the final moments, something happened that football still struggles to explain. Real Madrid in the Santiago Bernabeu. It was not just a victory, it was a rupture. A moment where the structure of football, its expectations, its hierarchies, briefly collapsed. Because for one night, a club from a country that doesn't exist stood at the center of the football world. Sheriff Tiraspol is often described as a football story. But it is not only that. Because when you look at the club, you cannot separate it from the place it comes from. And when you look at that place, you begin to understand that this story is about more than results. It is about visibility, a region that is not recognized by the world, suddenly appearing on one of the biggest stages in a global sport. A company building not just a football team, but an identity that extends beyond the pitch. And it is about perception. Because for many people, Sheriff's success was the first time they had ever heard of Transnistria. Football became a window, a way of making something invisible visible. But visibility does not always come with understanding, because even now, Sheriff Tiraspol remains difficult to define. Is it a symbol of opportunity, a demonstration of what investment can build, or is it something else entirely? A reflection of control, of influence, of a system that exists outside the structures most of football operates within. There are no simple answers. And perhaps that is what makes this story so compelling. Because Sheriff does not fit, not into football, not into politics, not into the categories we usually rely on to explain the world. In football, we are used to clear structures, countries, leagues, systems that define where teams belong. Sheriff Tiraspol challenges all of that. It exists in a place that is real, but not officially recognized. It competes in a system that depends on structure, while coming from outside of it. And somehow it makes both things true at the same time. Because in the end, football does not only belong to the places we recognize, it also belongs to the ones we don't fully understand. And sometimes the most interesting stories are not found at the center of the game, but at its edges, where reality and recognition no longer align, and where a club from a country that doesn't exist can still make the world pay attention. Thank you for watching this episode of Hidden Club Stories. If you want to discover more clubs with identity, history and soul, make sure to subscribe, because somewhere out there, another story is already waiting.